Did you know that nearly 40% of low-speed motorcycle accidents happen during basic maneuvers like U-turns? Riders make the same critical mistakes over and over again. But today, we're going to fix that. In this video, I'm breaking down 9 common U-turn mistakes that are ruining your turns, and I'm going to show you exactly how to avoid them. Stick around, because mistake number 5 will make you shocked, but it could also save you from your next close call. Let's dive in. Number 1. Not turning the head and eyes correctly. One of the biggest mistakes you can make during a U-turn, and trust me, I see this all the time, is not turning your head and eyes properly. This might sound simple, but failing to do it can make or break your turn. Here's the deal. If you're staring down at the ground, the cones, or your handlebars, your body naturally follows where you're looking. And guess what? You're either going to hit those cones, wobble, or completely miss the turn. To execute a smooth U-turn, you have to lead with your vision. Think of your head and eyes like the GPS for your body. Point your chin toward the exit of the turn and lock your eyes on where you want to go. The farther and faster you turn your head, the smoother your bike will follow. Don't make the rookie mistake of hesitating or looking down. It'll throw off your balance and increase your chances of tipping over. Number 2. Entering the turn with poor positioning. Positioning is everything when it comes to nailing a U-turn, and one common mistake that catches a lot of riders off guard is entering the turn with poor setup. If you ride straight into the U-turn box without thinking about your approach, you're already setting yourself up for failure. Here's what happens. You end up losing valuable space, forcing yourself into a tighter, more difficult turn. And let me tell you, when you're working with limited space, every inch matters. To fix this, you need to enter the turn at an angle. Don't go straight in. Start wide and attack the dead space by coming in tight near the entrance cones. This gives you more room to work with and allows for a smoother, tighter turn without feeling like you're fighting the bike. Proper setup makes the turn feel effortless, while poor positioning turns it into a struggle. So, plan your approach, use the full width of the turn, and give yourself that extra real estate to glide through confidently. 3. Going too fast. Speed is the silent killer of U-turns, and if you're coming in too hot, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Many riders treat a U-turn like a race. The faster you go, the wider your turning radius becomes, and the harder it is to stay in control. And let's be real. Trying to muscle through a fast U-turn usually ends in a cone getting knocked over, or worse, the bike tipping. The sweet spot for speed is around 5 to 7 miles per hour. Slow and steady is key here. If you find yourself picking up speed mid-turn, lightly drag the rear brake to keep things under control. But be careful. Never touch the front brake during slow-speed maneuvers. It'll cause the bike to jerk forward and throw off your balance. The goal is smooth, controlled speed so that you can lean just enough to make the turn without overcompensating. Slow it down, and you'll see how much easier it is to glide through the U-turn like a pro. Number 4. Poor handlebar control or slow turns. If you're turning the handlebars too slowly or hesitating during the turn, you're making it way harder on yourself. A slow handlebar turn leads to wider turns, missed exits, and, if you're unlucky, knocking over a cone or losing balance altogether. The trick here is speed and purpose. When you're entering a U-turn, you want to commit to that handlebar turn with confidence and precision. As soon as you start turning your head and eyes, your handlebars should follow quickly and smoothly. Don't second-guess yourself. If you hesitate or try to ease into the turn, you're basically guaranteeing that it won't be tight enough, and you'll end up struggling. Think of it like snapping into place. Quick, but controlled. The faster and more deliberate your handlebar turn, the tighter and smoother your U-turn will be. 5. Not staying in the friction zone. If you're not staying in the friction zone during a U-turn, you're giving up control of your bike, and that's a recipe for disaster. The friction zone is that sweet spot in your clutch where you're balancing power to the rear wheel without fully engaging it. When you leave this zone or depend on momentum to carry you through, your bike becomes unstable and harder to control. And if you're thinking, I'll just coast through, think again. Without the friction zone, any slight shift in balance or a sudden obstacle can cause you to tip or drop the bike. Here's the fix. Stay in the friction zone by keeping a slight pull on the clutch while maintaining steady throttle, around 2,000 RPMs for most bikes. This gives you the flexibility to adjust smoothly. If you need to slow down, lightly drag the rear brake, and if you feel that uh-oh moment creeping in, simply release the clutch a little, and the bike will stabilize. Riders who master this can stop, adjust, or change direction mid-turn with ease. Don't rely on momentum, rely on control. 6. Revving the engine too high. Sure, it might sound cool, but trust me, it's doing more harm than good. When you rev too high while staying in the friction zone, you're putting unnecessary stress on the clutch, causing it to wear out faster and overheat. Plus, high RPMs can make the bike feel jumpy and harder to control, which is the last thing you want during a tight, slow-speed maneuver. The key is to find the balance. For most bikes, keeping the engine around 2,000 RPMs is more than enough power to maintain smooth movement without lugging the engine or frying the clutch. You don't need to be redlining it to complete the turn. Steady throttle and smooth clutch control are your best friends here. Revving too high isn't just bad for your bike, it's bad for your technique. Keep it smooth, controlled, and low, and your U-turns will feel effortless. 7. Improper use of brakes. Brakes can either be your best friend or your worst enemy during a U-turn, and unfortunately, many riders fall into the trap of using them the wrong way. The biggest mistake? Grabbing the front brake. When you're moving, at slow speeds, hitting the front brake causes the front end of the bike to dive forward, throwing off your balance and making it much easier to tip over. I've seen this mistake lead to bikes toppling in an instant, and it's something you want to avoid at all costs. Instead, you should be lightly dragging the rear brake throughout the turn. The rear brake gives you smooth, controlled deceleration without upsetting the bike's balance. But here's the key. Don't stab or slam on the rear brake either. That sudden jolt can make the bike wobble or stall. Think of it like applying gentle, consistent pressure to fine-tune your speed. If you enter the turn too fast, just tap the rear brake lightly to regain control. The proper use of brakes can mean the difference between a smooth U-turn and a wobbly mess, so practice using that rear brake with finesse. Leaning too much or too little. Leaning is a critical part of making a U-turn, but it's also one of the trickiest things to get right. Lean too little, and you'll end up making a wide, awkward turn that's hard to control. Lean too much, and you risk losing balance, causing the bike to tip or slide out from under you. It's a delicate balance, but once you understand it, your U-turns will feel a whole lot smoother. The key is to lean just enough to match your speed and handlebar position. If you're going slower, as you should be during a U-turn, a slight lean will do the trick. No need to throw your weight into it. Keep your head and eyes up and let the bike naturally follow where you're looking. Leaning too aggressively often happens when riders panic or try to force the turn, instead of trusting their setup and balance. On the flip side, not leaning enough typically comes from hesitation, causing wider turns and missed exits. Practice leaning with control, keeping your body loose, and let the bike do the work. Once you find that sweet spot, you'll wonder how you ever struggled with U-turns in the first place. 9. Relying on momentum instead of control. Another mistake riders make during a U-turn is relying on momentum to carry them through the turn instead of maintaining proper control. At first, it might seem like an easy fix. Just build up a bit of speed and let the bike coast through the turn. But here's the problem. When you rely on momentum, you're essentially handing over control to chance. If something unexpected happens, like a sudden obstacle or loss of balance, you'll have no way to correct it smoothly. The bike will feel wobbly, and your chances of tipping over go way up. Instead, stay in the friction zone. By balancing your clutch, throttle, and rear brake, you have complete control over the bike's speed and direction. If you need to slow down or make an adjustment mid-turn, you can do it seamlessly without losing balance. Momentum leaves you vulnerable, but the friction zone gives you flexibility and control, allowing you to come to a smooth stop or adjust your turn on the fly.